Welcome in. Friday night means it's time for DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy. We get it started right after this. Oh, yes, indeed. It's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans, gentlemen. It is the first week of the playoffs. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? And if you don't know that Jim Mora reference, get the hell out of this this clip here. So in any case, I'm your host, Jeff Mesha, and I almost put on oven mitts in preparation for the hot takes that I know these two gentlemen are have. Mikey, what's going down in the corn? I almost said Cornhusker State, brother.
It's all pretty much shut down on the east side of it. It's really cold up here. It's like 4 below right now. I am really questioning my life decisions. I really still just love it up here. I'll take cold over people any day of the week, and I can now officially say that being here as long as I have. So
good man. And then Joseph, have you dug out from your foot of snow from last week?
Well, I have, but that's a tough feat for somebody who's only standing 3 feet tall. But I do have, unfortunately, some breaking news in the Seinfeld world once again. The first fantasy football team name that I ever used was Crazy Joe Davola. And we will have to take a moment of silence as the actor who played Crazy Joe Davola, Peter Crombie, has passed away at age 71.
Oh, man, that's a real bummer.
Wow. Rest in peace to the clown, Crazy Joe Davola. We loved you for those creepy episodes that you were on, and I didn't know he was 71. That really hits home how old we're getting here, boys. So if you haven't joined us before, let's hope you have. If you have not, we do all things DFS. Usually it's the main Sunday slate, but because it's the playoffs and we got Saturday and Sunday games, we're going to go through lineups for both days. I know there is a Monday game, but it's almost irrelevant with Philadelphia and Tampa Bay. That's almost non-excitement because the Eagles have fallen off the face of the earth seemingly. So, but first we'll get into injury-wise this coming weekend. Joe, what do we got for injury updates?
Yeah, we're relatively healthy for the playoffs, which is a nice thing, but there are still some things to talk about. Quarterback-wise, Jalen Hurts is, I guess, the only question mark. I mean, we know that he's going to play, but he's got a bad finger. That's what she said, and I don't think he's actually thrown a ball all week this week is what I heard reported yesterday. So some concern there in Philadelphia, along with the fact that they've stunk the last month or month and a half of the season. Miami's still playing the game with both Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. It feels like Mostert's going to play. Waddle feels a little more questionable. It feels like they're both going to play less than 100% and in sub-zero temperatures. So buyer beware with those two guys. Noah Brown still showing questionable. He did log a limited practice. I feel like he will play also, not 100%, but I mean, at this time of year, who really is? I'll dig a little deep. Cedric Tillman out for the Browns as their number 3 wide receiver. The only reason why I mentioned that is, and I think somebody's I don't want to steal any thunder, but David Bell had 2 touchdowns last week as the second unit played, and now he'll slot into the number 3 wide receiver there role for Cleveland. There could be a little bit of relevance there. Really, it looks like the Packer wide receivers, for the most part, it looks like are finally healthy. Still some questionable tags on Watson, but it feels like he's going to play. Although I will just say, Gabe Davis has been announced out as of noon today, which I actually didn't see till now. So I already had Khalil Shakir in a couple of my lineups. I love him now as the number 2 there, as long as the weather doesn't completely stunt the passing game there for Buffalo. It looks like, Christian Watson, questionable. I got to believe he's going to play, but he is questionable right now. And what did I just see? Yes, the other one that is somewhat relevant. I mean, here's the problem. You do a DFS lineup now, there's not a lot of 3,500 plays that make a lot of sense. You're playing with an abbreviated schedule, the best teams, the best players. So if you get these opportunities, and that's why we bring up David Bell, and now Khalif Raymond's going to be out for Detroit. So that's going to make Jamison Williams and Josh Reynolds a little more valuable too. And when you got to fit in these guys in these rosters, that could be the play that wins it or loses it for you. So that's pretty much it on the injury front, though.
I got you. And then you mentioned a little bit on the weather's front, at least in Kansas City. And I think we also talked during the week, Buffalo is going to be a little windy. Is that what you mentioned?
I think Buffalo looks like it's going to be very windy and might just have some pure snow, where Kansas City is going to be like 0 degrees and like a 20-degree wind chill. And one thing, I want to edit myself on injuries because there are actually 2 relevant tight end injuries that are worth talking about. Sam Laporta, the numbnuts move of the week, in my opinion, last week, there were 2 of them. It was from Detroit and Baltimore. Why Baltimore was playing Gus Edwards or any of their guys at all is beyond me. And why Detroit played the whole game. I know, it didn't make any sense. Laporta hyperextended his knee. Positive, as of Monday, they didn't think he was going to be able to play for sure. Now it looks like he actually might give it a shot. And then the other one is Tyler Higbee for the Rams. So same game. He's questionable with a shoulder. He missed last week. That's going to be an interesting one too. And again, relevant fantasy-wise for sure.
Right on. So from there, we'll just kind of jump into. I guess we'll start with the Saturday slates. It's only 2 games on Saturday. You got Cleveland at Houston and Miami at Kansas City. Cleveland's favorite in Houston, which is interesting because since Joe Flacco got there, they seem to be like a runaway freight train, and everybody has caught fire. And we'll get into that certainly with the lineups. But I'll go ahead and start with you, Mike. Who you got as far as Saturday lineups, and we'll kind of discuss that from there.
So my Saturday lineup that I got rocking right now, we're definitely rolling out with Joe Flacco. That guy's been on fire. That said, now that I've got him in my lineup, he'll probably act like the 50-year-old that he really is, and do me no justice. But I'm actually stacking up Cleveland. I think they're going to be putting the hurting on Houston. I think that defense is going to keep them in the game. I got Jerome Ford coming out next. 7,000, can't miss with that. Jerome Ford's been tearing it up like pretty much all season long, and this guy's been very fantasy relevant throughout the whole entire season. But so last week maybe not so much, but last week they really weren't playing that much with him. But the week before that versus the Jets, who's a very good defense, he put up 25 against them in FanDuel. So I'm loving him against this Houston defense. Isaiah Pacheco, I think Kansas City is going to be able to keep up with Miami, but I don't think they're going to be able to beat Miami. But I do think it's going to be a shootout. I think I got Cedric Wilson Jr. With Waddle kind of still questionable, although Waddle does sound like he was probably going to be back in there. I do still like Wilson as the 3 option there. Rashee Rice, I think Rashee Rice is going to cook. We're cooking some rice. Robert Woods is back at practice. He's got a questionable tag, but he'll certainly play. David Nwoku, definitely got him. Yoko. Got him going at tight end for $7,000, and then Amari Cooper for $7,500, just because you can't ignore what that guy's been doing with Joe Flacco. So we got a heavy stack on them Cleveland boys. And then I got Kansas City's defense against Miami because, like I said, I think Miami can maybe edge that game out, but I do actually see Kansas City winning it. So that's my lineup right there for Saturday.
So I'll say this about Yoko, and that's a joke from, I believe that was last season. And Joe always mispronounces at least one name, so we got to. Wasn't this? Well, probably, but in any case. To pronounce it correctly, it's David Njoku. Over the last 4 games, FanDuel-wise, he's been averaging over 18 points a game. And he made the Pro Bowl, and that has everything to do with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, since he's gotten back there in 5 games, he's averaged almost 22 points a game on FanDuel. He has 13 TDs. What's running against him is he has 8 interceptions in those 5 games. So hopefully he can kind of shore that up. But I actually don't mind those picks or stacking Cleveland at all against Houston. What are your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I may swap out, but for the most part, the spirit of it is there. I'm playing Flacco. I think you have to play Cooper or Nwoku, one of the 2 for sure. And then you have to watch out for the Miami KC game from a weather perspective. You said Chiefs defense, right, Mikey?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I mean, you gotta like that based on Miami's history in the cold weather. So I don't have, Pacheco. You got to believe in that game is tailor-made for him. Physical between the tackle, running back. I would actually love to see Mostert not play because I'd feel pretty good about A-Chain too if he was the only guy in the backfield. I just feel like with Mostert playing, it's going to be hard to get a touchdown from A-Chain. But no, overall, as far as it pertains to his lineup, I feel good about that. And out of those 4 teams, given the weather, I believe that Cleveland will be the highest scoring team of the weekend. I think that's going to end up being a close game, but I just feel like Cleveland's a little more balanced than Houston on the defensive side.
Interesting. The only thing I will say, just as to play devil's advocate a little bit on Cedric Wilson, he hasn't had more than 4 receptions in a game all year, and that was only one time. Other than that, it's been 3 receptions, 1, 2 here and there. And I get why you put him in a lineup, Mike. I mean, you need a guy with a low salary when you're fitting in, other guys like Njoku and Flacco and all those guys. So that would just be my only critique as far as the lineup is concerned.
I
Joe,
agree. If real quick there, if Waddle doesn't play, I certainly agree with the Wilson play. If Waddle played, Wilson kind of does sneak in there. To your point, Jeff, everybody's got to have one of those in this lineup. For me, it's Justin Watson. So, Watson, Wilson, you can't split hairs there.
All right. Well, speaking of that, we'll go ahead and get into your Saturday lineup since you already mentioned Justin Watson, but you can kind of start from the top and roll from there.
All right. So we're running on DraftKings here. And what we got going on is, once again, I'm with Mikey, Joe Flacco. He's just going over 20 every single week. And there's no reason to think against Houston he won't do that. On the flip side of it, it's kind of funny. Like one of the most popular prop bets of the week is Joe Flacco over a half an interception because, as you can see, he's thrown a pick in at least 5 games in a row. So you may, and he throw 2 against Houston. And another interesting stat I heard, which doesn't make me gun shy because I don't give a shit if he throws 4 picks, if he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's also really bad against the zone in which Houston plays most of the time. Now, that being said, Houston on the other side has to figure out how to not be raked by Amari Cooper as they were a few weeks ago. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, given the fact that these guys aren't division rivals, but they did just play 3 weeks ago, which is kind of interesting. Like Mikey, I'm going Pacheco and Ford. I believe Mikey had both of those in his lineup. He, for all the reasons that he said, game script, weather, everything Kansas City wants to do really relies on Pacheco being involved. He's looked really good the second half of the season. Ford, I loved at the beginning of the year. Then he kind of cooled down a little bit. Hunt had a nice little touchdown streak, but not so much last week because it was an irrelevant game for Cleveland. But in that Jets game, which they were still playing for something, he had the 12 for 64. But the thing that really excited me was the 2 catches for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he starts playing a role in the passing game, I feel like you can expect 20 plus from him. And at 5,500, that's some great value on DraftKings. I'm playing Tyreek Hill as of now. I'm watching that. I mean, you got to watch everything from a weather perspective in Buffalo and Kansas City. You can't make your lineup today and forget about it until Sunday. You're going to have to look again. I like Tyreek Hill if the weather conditions make it throwable. But if we're talking huge wins and you're not going to be able to throw much, Miami already sucks in the cold weather. I will pull him, but I would like to play Tyreek Hill because even when Miami has sucked, for the most part, he's done pretty well. It will be interesting because KC did a pretty good job on Hill. When they met earlier the year in Germany, 8 for 62 with no touchdowns for Tyreek Hill. That's a dreadful week. So it'll be interesting to see if Spagnuolo can scheme him out again. I don't think Mikey had Nico Collins in his lineup, and that is one guy where Cleveland's got a good defense, but you got to remember, and I'll go to it right now. The Cleveland defense, as good as it is, and it's got sacks, they give up points. It's not like they're shutting teams down. 31, 14, 22, 11, 27, 34, 27. So there are points to be had on that against that Brown defense. Nico Collins had just been such a freaking machine for this team that I don't expect him to go for 37-5 as he did last week, but I think he will be relevant. I do expect Houston put up some points. My CJ Wilson or Cedric Wilson for the week is Justin Watson. One encouraging thing with Watson, and again, he didn't play much last week. It didn't matter. But after Rice, he has become the second most reliable and thrown to receiver of the group. And they do look to him in like the red zone and on the other side of the field. So maybe he gets in the end zone, 3,400, pretty much anything other than a 0, and you'd be okay with it. Tight end, lots of good options. I'm going to go with Dalton Schultz this week. He's price friendly on DraftKings at 4,400. And 7 for 42 or 5 for 42 with 7 targets. So he's pretty much getting the second most targets on that team now with no Tank Dell and just him and Nico. I did, it's not often you flex a tight end in DFS, but when you've got David Njoku, you can call him whatever the hell you want. The bottom line is the guy has been absolutely insane for the tight end position. Let's do some quick math. 18 last 4 games, that's 17, 31, 39 targets in the last 4 games for 28 receptions, over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Those are big games with Amari Cooper and without Amari Cooper. So I love Nwoku at 5,600, and I'll round out my lineup with that Chief defense, taking advantage of the weather forecast and the fact that Miami sucks in bad weather, sucks on the road, and the Chiefs kind of solved their offensive puzzle the first time they met. And it's interesting. The Chiefs defense, kind of a story for them this year. It's been the defense in the running game more than anything that's gotten them to where they are. So I will roll with them at a nice little 2,900 on DraftKings.
Well, I'll say this too, actually, since you just brought up the Kansas City defense. They haven't allowed more than 17 points over the last 4 weeks, so the defense has actually played pretty well. And don't get me wrong, I got Tyreek Hill in my lineup too, but that seemingly potent Miami offense, they could be shut down in some cold weather in Kansas City, so I don't mind that pick. One thing that I will say, though, is Dalton Schultz. He hasn't had a touchdown since November 19th. He hasn't been over 10 FanDuel points since November 5th, so I don't know if maybe you could fit Njoku in at tight end and somebody else to flex.
He just went 8 for 61 a couple of weeks ago. There's no way that's under 10 points on FanDuel.
Well, let me have to check that out. I guess you'll fact check me on that one, but that's one that I looked up earlier.
He's not getting in the end zone. You're absolutely right about that. He is not getting in the end zone. He's been banged up. I'm hoping to get like 4 for 50 from him. If he got in the end zone, it would be phenomenal. But as you say that, let's take a look here. So Mikey didn't play Kelsey. Are you playing Kelsey, Jeff?
No.
So if you're not playing Kelsey, and I am playing Nwoku, so you can't Nwoku me. I was really at Schultz or Smythe, which
Well,
Smythe,
what he's saying though
I don't
is
know.
he's saying to get going instead of going with Njoku in your flex, take him in for Dalton Schultz and then put somebody else in your flex. So that opens up way more players than just another tight end.
So let's see here. But the problem with that, though, is 4,400. Yeah, that's not too bad. You can 4,400 that. So basically, we're talking about Schultz. Yeah, see, it doesn't work, though, because you're talking about Schultz or who? Perrine or Elijah Moore? I like Schultz more than Elijah Moore. David Bell.
Yeah, fair enough. I like Schultz better than the rest of that riffraff you got there, too.
Which is funny because with Flacco, and I don't mean to interrupt, but with Flacco at the helm, I actually got Elijah Moore in. And sorry, you said last week he went for 8 for 61. Is that what you said?
8 for 61.
Yeah, on FanDuel. Yeah, against Cleveland, actually. Yeah, so that's 10.1 FanDuel points.
It's 14 DraftKings. I think the difference is, DraftKings does the full point PPR and FanDuel maybe does half.
They do have, yes. So, in any case, so I appreciate the attempt at fact check, but we're on 2 different wavelengths as far as that concerns. So we're both right, I guess. Any other point for or against on lineup there, Mike?
No, I agree completely. I wish we could get out of Njoku in the flex and put him in the tight end, but looking at the options, I think that this is a pretty good lineup. I like his receivers. Now if the weather does look like it's going to really hinder a lot of things there, I can see moving off of Tyreek Hill and definitely making that move.
And then, so real quick, and then Jeff, we'll get to you. But let's say when you don't play Hill and you play Amari Cooper, and because I already got Collins in. So then you do put Nwoko in the tight end position. Now I got 6,300 for flex. Now you're talking about flex and Kelsey. So, I almost maybe even talk myself into doing that anyway. I don't know. Is that better than what I had previously? This iteration?
I think so, yeah. I like it better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say one way or the other. It's just a little food for thought for anybody who's watching or listening, and food for thought for you as we're getting into it and discussing. So,
let me ask you one question, Jeff, because you're good about the not overdoing it on the what have you done for me lately, and certainly with Amari Cooper, you can certainly do that. How do you feel about Amari Cooper this week? Do you think he's a slam dunk to just have a huge game, or are you buyer beware on Cooper?
It's tough. That's the thing. And it's tough not to get caught up in what he just did to Houston in Houston when he went for 11 for 265 and 2 touchdowns. So it's difficult to get away from that with Amari Cooper. Now, having said that, I didn't put Amari Cooper in my lineup because I like some other wide receivers a little bit better. And Amari Cooper kind of can be a little bit hot and cold depending on what week he's on. 1 week he'll have, huge numbers, and then he'll pull a Deshaun Jackson essentially. So I guess we'll see. I'm hoping for Mikey's sake and his lineup that Cooper does the same thing. But I guess it remains to be seen. So, but as far as my Saturday lineup, I won't necessarily
hold on
beat
1 second. Let me get it on the screen.
Well, I'll start with Flacco. We've already discussed him at length. I'm not going to get into that really too much. Running back wise, I'm going Devin Singletary, 6,400 at home versus Cleveland. Now, Singletary, the last 5 games, touches wise, he's had 13, 30, 12, 19, and 25. And in those same games, Damian Pierce has had 5, 1, 4, 9, and 0. So Singletary is definitely the guy there in Houston. So I think if anybody's going to get some points running back wise, I think he's going to be the guy. Other running back, I got Edwards-Helaire at home versus Miami. Not necessarily my favorite pick, but I'm hoping that Edwards-Helaire maybe gets in the end zone here and there. He's gotten a little bit thick over the last year. I don't know what he's been doing, sitting at home, maybe having some ring dings or something like that. Just hasn't necessarily been on the field as much, but hopefully he puts in the end zone. And for 5,400, I kind of need him to sneak in my wide receivers there, which leads me to Tyreek Hill. Joe mentioned kind of, and I mentioned too, kind of the drawbacks a little bit as far as Tyreek Hill up against that Kansas City defense. What I will say is I believe this is the first time Tyreek Hill has been back in Kansas City with the Dolphins, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I think he's going to be amped to have a big game. They're going to have a good amount of targets towards him. So I didn't mind spending the 9,400, nor did I mind spending the 8,300 with Nico Collins at home versus Cleveland. Nico Collins, my boy, given Tank Dell is out, what he just did, I get it. We don't want to get caught up in the what have you just done, but Nico Collins has been fairly consistent, especially with Tank Dell not there. Again, another one that I had to fit in there, Justin Watson at home versus Miami. Not the greatest numbers. You're hoping he gets a few receptions for 30 yards and a touchdown, and that's just a home run for him. So tight end Njoku, we don't have to beat a dead horse. That guy's been phenomenal, and so that's why I had to make sure I got him in there as far as tight end was concerned. Flex, I went with Elijah Moore, simply because not necessarily he's the best talent. I'm hoping he kind of does maybe a little bit better than Justin Watson, and Flacco's been on such a tear that I believe that Elijah Moore could be that guy to get some receptions outside of Amari Cooper and David Njoku. So I guess we'll kind of see what happens there, but I wanted to fit him a little bit more in than like a Dalton Schultz or somebody like that. And then defense, I had Cleveland at home versus at Houston, 4,400. Again, Joe mentioned that they give up a lot of points, but they get a lot of sacks, they get some turnovers, they get some touchdowns here and there. So I'm hoping that they put up some decent points as far as fantasy is concerned. What do you guys got against that, for that?
I don't mind it. There's a lot of, like I said, we have quite a few similarities in there as far as they go. Elijah Moore scares me a little bit, but I mean, like, to get the big names that we have on here, we have to do those little things with those little names. And, what's really hard in these kind of competitions is getting that one guy to give you that edge. And for me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is definitely that guy that's going to separate you from the pack. If he does just maybe possibly score a touchdown, that could be something that puts you up a couple hundred places. So I definitely respect those kind of plays when we're talking about a 5 or a 2 game slate. So
it is tough as far as just 2 games on there and who to choose. And yeah, you do almost have to be kind of spot on with your lineup just because of the competition that you're going up against. So Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting to me in general, FanDuel, that Rice is $300 more expensive than Cooper. I think if I was in, I would take Cooper for the 300 over Rice there. But as far as your lineup goes, I understand. Like, I love Nico Collins, and if it's weather permitting, it's like, how can't you play Tyreek Hill? So I get that, and I've got Justin Watson as my cheap wideout play too. The running back, you just had to pillage from your running back budget a little too much for me to be comfortable. As much as I want both of those wideouts in, I don't think I can go both Singletary and Helaire. I'm okay with Singletary at 64. You said all the right points about him. He's going to have double-digit touches, and no reason to think he couldn't turn that into double-digit points. The Helaire move, it is possible, and in bad weather, he will get some carries. It's just it's hard to sit there with Mostert, Pacheco, A-Chain, and Ford. But at the same time, the win is this. If none of those guys have a big game, even if Helaire sucks, you're ahead of the game because now you got rip-roaring wideouts and you don't have to catch up that much. So I completely get it. I'd be a little uncomfortable with Helaire, but if we wake up tomorrow and the forecast is even worse, then I kind of like Helaire more. And as far as like in my situation, I went Schultz over Elijah Moore, but to me, that's a flip of a coin. I'm not passionately saying Schultz is better than Moore. If I played 2 different lineups with the same scenario, I'd play Schultz in one and Moore in one. So I'm all for that. Defensively, I would stay away from the Houston defense. I would probably stay away from the Miami defense, even though the weather might make them a little viable. So I'm all for the Cleveland defense. I do believe Houston will score 20 plus, but I think Cleveland's going to get some defensive points out of turnovers and whatnot.
Right on. So having said that, we can jump into the Sunday matchup. So you got Pittsburgh at Buffalo, and in that game, Buffalo is -10. Green Bay at Dallas minus 7.5, or at least the last lines that I saw. And then the Rams at Detroit -3. The Rams-Detroit game had the highest over-under of the week at 51.5, at least from what I've seen. Mike, Sunday lineup, who you rolling with?
So on my Sunday line, I got to have Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford's going to be the guy out there. I think at Detroit, he's going to put it to him like a good reminder of, hey, guys, remember me. I got Najee Harris at 6,500. I think Pittsburgh's going to put the hurting on Buffalo. I don't know why. I feel like Buffalo has not been playing their best football for so long now that I think is really going to catch up to them this weekend. I got Jahmyr Gibbs at home against the Rams, 7,400. The guy's just been getting used. Give it to me one more time. And then I really think that that's going to be the game to really focus on that day is the Rams-Detroit game. So I'm getting myself some Amon-Ra St. Brown at home against the Rams. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be explosive. I got Dontavian Wicks. That guy's been on fire, and I think that they're going to have to throw the ball a lot to keep up with Dallas in this game. And I think he's going to be a huge part of that. Stephon Diggs, the guys do. I know he did better last week as far as it goes, but I think we're still waiting for that big explosion that we know we can get out of Stephon Diggs. So I got him for 7,700. Jake Ferguson, he's been lights out as far as the tight end goes. The guy's just consistently getting eight targets. In the last 2 games, he's got 6. But this is going to be a bigger stage. I think we're going to see a lot more usage out of him. I think we're going to see at least 10 targets on that guy this weekend. Then DeMarcus Robinson, man, this guy's been quietly just killing it lately. He's been doing really good this season as far as the past few weeks. And I know I was talking trash. Now, really good. Now, so we're talking about 6,300. I'm going to give me a guy that got me 10 targets last week, had 6 receptions for 92 yards, though. He did fumble it twice, so keep your eye on him there as far as it goes. But, yeah, so that's kind of my lineup right there. And then my defense, we got the Packers. I think they're going to be able to, like I said, I think they're going to play Dallas tough. I feel like Packers might be that team that everybody's going to be really mad that they led in the playoffs right here because they can come through and win this thing. So
I'll say this, I guess, since we just got off the defense there, similar to last time. The Packers, the last two games, they've given up 9 and 10 points respectively. But before that, they gave up 30 to Carolina. They gave up 34 to Tampa Bay and then 24 to the lowly New York Giants and Tommy Cutlets over there. So, I mean, Dallas is going to put up their points, but I think, it should be an interesting game again, we're limited as to who we can go with defense-wise, so I see where you're going to that. But I think Dallas is going to have a game on then. Joe, you got any feedback on Mike's lineup?
It's interesting because if you look at Saturday, our low guys were Watson and who's the other guy? Not Moore. Oh, it's Wilson from Miami. So now you look at this lineup, and the low guys are Wicks. The cheap plays are Wicks and Robinson, which are better than, even Elijah Moore and Watson and Wilson. So I think he did a great job to be able to not have anybody. Like, you don't have anybody in that lineup where you're like, oh my God, I have to cross my fingers that they're going to hit 10 points. Robinson's done it 5 weeks in a row, and he's the biggest risk out of anybody in that lineup pretty much. Maybe Wicks, but I believe Wicks at the least, Wicks is going to get 10 points trash in the fourth quarter. So the fact that, now I disagree. I think the Packers are going to give up 47 points and get absolutely raped on Sunday. But I'm okay with putting that defense in to have the rest of that lineup. I think it's worth it to have 8 guys where they should all score you double digits. You usually have at least one where double digits is best case scenario. So I commend them on that. We have a lot of similarities. We do have some differences, but I think it's pretty solid other than that defensive play, but I totally get why it's in there.
Well, I'll say this, and did I see Diggs in there too at wide receiver, Mike?
Yeah.
So I went with my gut last week, or maybe my heart a little bit, thinking that Diggs could bounce back because he's just been simply not that. Over the last 8 weeks, he's averaged, or he's put up over 7 FanDuel points only twice, and those are 16.4, and then last week was 12.2. The guy, I don't get it with Diggs. He's a phenomenal player. I just don't know why Josh Allen is not going to him. So, you mentioned that Joe, you mentioned it's a slam dunk maybe to have guys, or all these guys, be over 10 FanDuel points. Diggs, honestly, out of all those, I'm most concerned about.
No Gabe Davis now too. So, who the hell's he throwing to if it ain't Diggs?
Well, every time we talk about Gabe Davis, he goes over. So,
You're right. Here'd my question be with Diggs. So I'm looking, and I don't know, I don't have it up because, again, I went DraftKings. So on DraftKings, Diggs is $200 more expensive than Nakua. Could you have played Nakua over Diggs and you chose Diggs, or was Nakua more expensive on FanDuel?
I chose Diggs because I feel like he's going to go hard this weekend. I think he's going to be he's going to actually probably be the last game as a Bill if you want to take my full analysis there. But yeah, no, it looks like Puka Nakua is $300 more expensive than Diggs.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I think Diggs is going to have a good game because it's the playoffs, and I think he's a do or die type of guy. I guess my only concern there would be if the weather forecast is even worse than what we know it to be now. Maybe you switch, maybe you make the tweak. But Diggs is a big player, big game player, and as long as the weather allows you to throw the ball, I would be shocked if Allen and Diggs don't have a good game. Like, man, I would be real bummed out for Buffalo if they don't win this game and do it with Diggs and Allen and everything there. I would be really bummed out for them in the city.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Agreed. Actually, Buffalo is a really great sports town if you've ever been there. They haven't won anything. You almost feel you're rooting for them, man, every time. But having said that, Joe, Sunday lineup, what do you got wrong with, my friend?
So let's go back to the well here. We get the 3-game slate, and how nice it is it to have 3 days of playoff football now with the inclusion of that Monday night game too. But I love the 2 games on Saturday, the 3 games on Sunday. I'm rolling out Dak Prescott 7,600 Green Bay. At Dallas. I don't, I think the Cowboys will lose to San Francisco, but I think Dak Prescott is going to just throw a facial up on the Packers on Sunday. I look forward to reaping the benefits of that. I expect them to go 20 over. Now, that being said, I would expect Stafford and Love to go 20 over too, because I think Love's going to have a lot of trash second half points. So I don't think Prescott's the only one who's going to have a big day, but I love Dak. I'm with Mikey, Gibbs, and Harris. I mean, it's really hard to not play Najee Harris right now, especially understanding what the weather's like. The guy's gone for exactly 27 DraftKings points 2 weeks in a row. And he just looked way better than he's looked for like the last 18 months all of a sudden too. So I'm comfortable with Najee Harris. And at 5,400, I don't know what he was. I forgot what you said he was on FanDuel. 5,400 felt a little cheap for him on DraftKings. Yeah, and even that I feel like a good price on FanDuel. So Najee's still kind of a bargain. I feel good about that. Gibbs or Montgomery, it's a tough one. And Montgomery's been getting the touchdowns, but in push comes to shove, if this is a game of fireworks offensively, I feel like you got to have Gibbs in there, although I wouldn't argue with somebody who plays Montgomery. Let's look at the wideouts real quick, and there are so many good options on that Sunday slate. I have to do the Dak CeeDee Lamb stack. CeeDee Lamb just single-handedly won me my fantasy championship over the last couple of weeks. I got to believe he has another big game. The Packers are not a very good pass defense, I don't believe. So I love CeeDee Lamb to continue his season. That being said, and this goes back to Jeff, with trying to not have the running backs for the wideouts. This Sunday slate's another example of that. I got to go Amon-Ra St. Brown too. He is such – I don't remember why, because obviously Waddle's hurt, so Hill's going to get all the targets there. But when Waddle's healthy, he's relevant. I don't remember a team that is good and successful in their passing game so heavily relying just on one guy as Goff relies on St. Brown. If you look at it, that's 32 targets over the last 3 games. For over 300 yards. He's got a touchdown 4 straight games. To me, it's just so hard not to play him. Same thing with CeeDee Lamb. And now I'll tell you what, the Khalil Shakur at 3,400. And now granted, there's no guarantee he's going to have a good game, especially with the weather. But now you're slipping him into the number 2 wideout spot, which means he's probably going to be on the field for 75% of their offensive snaps. He went for 6 and 105 last week in the important game against Miami. So I all of a sudden love Shakur for 3,400. Right now I got Higbee in at my tight end position for 3,400. Going to be a high scoring game. He had 7 targets last week, or his last game, 6 for 62. Now there's certainly a question. He's got a questionable tag. He may not play, but my plan is, if he doesn't, is I actually think I would just start his backup. And why are the salaries? Oh, this is bugging me. There we go. Laporta's questionable. You got Ferguson. I can't afford him. I can't afford Kincaid as much as I would like to. If Higbee can't play, I would go between Kraft and Higbee's backup, Allen. Kraft isn't quite as safe as before because Musgrave's back and he gets some targets there. I'm with Mikey on Demarcus Robinson as far as the flex position goes. It's just, it's impossible to argue with the guy at this point. You think it's a flash in the pan as a number 3, number 4 wideout, but 5 weeks in a row, relevant games, double digits in a game where I think Stafford's going to throw the ball a shit ton of times. And then I am going to play the Lions defense. I think the Rams will score. If I could afford the Buffalo defense, they would be my favorite play of that Sunday slate. But the Lions I will take at 3,100, hoping they get to Stafford a little bit and force a couple turnovers.
Right. I mean, you brought up Demarcus Robinson. Did I hear some echo in the background about T. Higgins? Did I hear something about that? Maybe. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, I know.
You did. You did get me on that one. What did T do? Did he get hurt though, or no?
I think we did. Well, we discussed it last week. He had like 1 catch for 7 yards. You thought maybe he got hurt. That might have been an excuse. We're not too sure. We haven't confirmed it, but In any case, I don't have much as far as constructive criticism on that is concerned. What I will say is that, I mean, Najee, to me, kind of came out of nowhere, man. It seemed like Warren was the guy in the middle part of the season, and then next thing you know, they're giving Najee like 30 carries each game over the last few games, seemingly. So that came out of left field. I don't know what you think, Mike. Games.
Yeah, no, it did to me too. No, and that's another one that I'm like I just don't know. Like I feel like Demarcus Robinson's a solid play. Khalil Shakir, I think no Gabe Davis. Higbee does bother me. I mean, because we've got just too many Rams we like, and we still got Cooper Kupp on that team too, and Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams has been ripping it up down the floor too. So that's the only real problem I have with this entire lineup is Higbee in the tight end position. But I get it, like it's probably a cost thing there as well.
You like Kraft more than Higbee? If Higbee's healthy, you would play Kraft over Higbee?
I would say I like him the same. So not much at all on either.
Okay. I got you.
And with Musgrave out there, it worries me. I'd almost rather play Musgrave over both of them, honestly.
Let's see. What did Musgrave do last week? It was his first game back. Yeah, he got one target, but I mean, it wasn't really, you can't really go by that because it was his first game back and he's going to play more this week. Yeah, it's a tough one there at tight end. Yeah, I would love to get to Kincaid or really Ferguson, I guess, really, but you can only do so much. Najee, the one thing with Najee versus Warren, I mean, even when Warren's getting as many touches, Najee's got the better shot at getting in the end zone. But Warren's got the better shot of busting a big one. And the other thing with Warren, he's probably a better DraftKings play because of the PPR is a full point on DraftKings and a half point on FanDuel. And we know Warren's going to, as a rule, catch more balls than Najee other than last week.
Right. Well, and having said that, I'll jump into my Sunday lineup if you don't mind there, my friend. So I actually kind of took a different approach. You're stacking Dallas for the most part, and you got a little bit of a Detroit and the Rams kind of sprinkled in there. I'm stacking the Rams, so I'm going Stafford at Detroit 7,400. So there were two Staffords this year, fantasy wise. You had the first 10 weeks where he was averaging 14 points a game on FanDuel, and then since November 26th, he's averaging 21 points a game. But I stacked that with Kyron Williams. He's 9,000, a bit high salary-wise at Detroit because the 26th, since that Stafford's been averaging those points, Kyron Williams kind of had his breakout game. He had 35 points, and I believe that was against Arizona. And since then, and including that game, Kyron Williams is averaging 22 FanDuel points a game. So I'm stacking Stafford, Kyron Williams. Then I'm going back to the well. I know I just bagged on Jaylen Warren a little bit, but he's 5,600, and like Joe kind of made that point, you hope he kind of busts one or a couple here and there as far as receptions are concerned, even though Najee is going to get the majority of the touches seemingly these days. So wide receiver, we already hammered on St. Brown. The guy's been about as consistent as it gets and gets more targets than we've seen in a while. And that seems to happen in Detroit a decent amount between Calvin Johnson, St. Brown, and I'm forgetting a couple other guys off my head, but
that's a fair point.
So, and then wide receiver Demarcus Robinson, 6,300, cheaper play, and the guy's been actually doing fairly well the last handful of weeks, so can't get away from him. Joe up on the screen has Dontavian Wicks at Dallas, 1,500, cheaper play, but I mean, Jordan Love had 316 yards last week. They're going to have to be throwing against Dallas. Dallas is, I agree with you. I think Dallas is going to be putting up some points. So Jordan Love is going to have a hell of a game to at least keep up. So Dontavian Wicks, might be up there as far as yardage is concerned. Tight end, Freiermuth at Buffalo, 4,900. I'm just thinking if weather is a factor, they might be going running game and tight end if they're going passing at all. So Freiermuth might get a little bit in there as far as that's concerned. Flex-wise, on the flip side of that, I got James Cook, who's been seemingly on fire for Buffalo, 7,100. And again, in the weather, you would think they're going to be running the ball a little bit more. I mean, Josh Allen will get his yardage for sure. And then defense, I got Dallas at home versus Green Bay, 4,600. the Dallas defense been hot and cold, but they got some good turnovers and they score some touchdowns. So we'll see what happens there. Green Bay will get their points, but I think Dallas is I think Joe's right. I think Dallas probably at the end of the day, I think that game is 42-28 Dallas. That's my call on that one. But in any case, what do you boys got as far as my lineup is concerned?
I just can't wait till next week when I'm laughing when the Packers win this game because, like I said, to me that's that dark horse that you don't want to let in there. But otherwise, Pat Freiermuth, he only got about 6 targets over the last 3 games, I believe. I mean, the guy hasn't been a very focal point of that offense. But again, I mean, like I'm kind of with you when we're talking about cold. I like it. Kind of goes back to the rookie quarterback to me. I like the tight end and I like the running back because you are going to have probably a few short routes. He'll probably be able to pull in 3 or 4 catches. So hopefully he can do something with them because at that price, you're getting a heck of a bargain on that on DraftKings or on FanDuel. So I like it. I overall like this lineup. I think it's going to be a good lineup for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a little different than me and you, Mikey. Like he's, Jeff's the only one that got Kyren Williams, and you can't argue with that. I have nothing bad to say about him. The one thing I would say, which I did not realize that Detroit, depending on where you look, I did not realize that Detroit was a top 5 run defense this year. But even seeing that didn't make me shy away from Kyren Williams. I just didn't want to have to pay up for him. But, so he's the only one that's got him. That'll be really interesting how that goes. I don't disagree with it again. Absolutely not. And then I'll say the same thing about James Cook. We don't have him in, with the weather, you would think we'd get a heavy dose of James Cook. This has been a pretty insane stat line for him. If you look at this, because all of a sudden in important games, 3 in a row, he's done pretty much nothing after all of a sudden before that, having 2 monster weeks or whatnot. So you got to believe with the weather and just the fact that Pittsburgh's a running team. So the game script feels like Cook's going to have the opportunities there. That'll be really interesting to see. And that's probably, in my opinion, the key to Jeff's lineup. If he gets a big game out of Cook, when we have, like Robinson in our flex, let's say there, he may end up with the best lineup out of the 3 of us. Now, the interesting thing with the Cook there, and I don't know, to me, it's a coin flip. Would you play Cook or Aaron Jones? And I'm just looking because they're $100 difference. So it'll be really interesting to me to see how that plays out. And then lastly, Jeff was the only one that could afford to pay up for the Dallas defense. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out also, but I would feel a little bit better about the Cowboy defense than my Lion defense or your Packer defense. So I would give Jeff kudos there. And I really do believe that James Cook is going to be, if you look at the 3 of our lineups, I'll call Cook the key to who wins the week for as far as the 3 of us goes on that Sunday.
Yep, I like that. I agree.
Well, should be interesting. We appreciate everybody sticking around and joining us here on a Friday night. There's some great playoff games, and at this point, your regular fantasy season is over. You're stuck with us through the playoffs with the DFS Chalk Talk. We're gonna be sticking to Friday nights at least through the playoffs, just because you got the Saturday games and Sunday, so we want to get in there before the Saturday games start. So we'll roll with that until the end of the season. But it's going to be an exciting slate of games. I like these matchups. You got Tyreek going back to Kansas City. You got Stafford going back to Detroit. There's just some juice behind these games.
Wind and snow in Buffalo. Oof.
Let me ask you, just so we can say we really covered it all. What are your guys' thoughts, game result wise and fantasy wise, single game? What are your guys' quick thoughts on that Philly Tampa game Monday night?
I say Baker Mayfield has been way underrated this year. I think Philly goes down. Tampa comes out a winner on that one. What do you say, Mike?
I actually disagree. I think Philly's going to show us what they got. I think they've been holding it back in the tank. I think they're going to explode out in the playoffs. That said, I would like to see Baker Mayfield go all the way. I love Baker Mayfield. So,
no, we'll have plenty to discuss. That's for sure. So,
yeah, I felt that way about Philly too. I'm a little squeamish now with the Jalen Hurts finger situation, Fingergate, let's call it. And I do believe Mike Evans is going to have a field day. I think that game's going to end up being one of the closer games of the week all of a sudden. Where
he's got 9 more fingers, he'll be fine.
Again, that's what she said.
Well, and on the bad dad jokes, we'll round out this episode right there. And as always, until next time, we got you covered.
And where'd Mikey go?